Okay, we come to this other idea of D's, which was crusty, and it's the letters stand for the capacity to receive, utilize, store, transform, and transmit information. Transform, transmit information. So I was looking at that ability. For instance, in the DNA spiral, the double spiral of DNA, you have the base pairs, and you've got those particular compounds marked by colors: guanine, adenine, sugar phosphate. And that is a crusty organization, and it receives, utilizes, stores, transforms, and transmits information into a human. No. So you could look at this in the building blocks of humanity, from particle to neutrino to nucleus to atom to amino acid to protein to molecule to cell to organ to organism. But it's not hierarchic, it's holonic. You know the difference? Yeah. So hierarchic is the way we organize just about everything. Where you've got the CEO neuron, for instance, you've got, and the guy on top is more important than the one down below. So you've got the peasants, and you've got the baronets, and you've got the lords and the barons and the earls and the dukes and the princes and the kings. And, well, the peasants, they're cannon fodder sort of thing. But with holonic organization, which is the way the universe is organized, you cannot have an atom without a nucleus. The nucleus is not as complex as the atom, but it is as important as the atom, because you take any one of those out and you stop the rest. And that's a fundamental way the universe is organized. You can't have your organisms without all the parts. And so you must treat them importantly. You find this in nature. We tend to think of earthworms as, of no importance. We scoop fish out of the sea as if there are no tomorrows. It's a good way of ensuring there are no tomorrows, actually. But when you think that earthworms developed the nodal cord that led to backbone in fish, and that everything that has a backbone came from that fish, and they also developed lungs, even though they're breathing water, but they developed lungs, which again transferred into the creatures that left the sea, and that all of us who have lungs and backbones owe a heck of a lot, our existence, to worms and fish. There's nothing fishy about that. It's just truth. And so we need to realize this, that the earth is our mother in this sense, all the bits. And so when we start to destroy it now and not value any part of it, we are destroying that which made us, killing our mother. And therefore, any of the development that can happen from now on in the remaining 4 billion years of the sun's energy can be stopped dead. It's a scary thing. So you have bacteria to bee to bat to bird to buffalo to baseball player, and there's Babe Ruth. You'd recognise Babe from, yeah. He was a chaotic character. Yeah. Yeah. And in our own bigger, so that you can go to the small ones, you can go down, right down to the particle, all the way down, but you can go all the way up, from gas to stars to galaxies to second generation stars, of which our Earth is one. All of them are vital in the process. What our God seems to have done in the first incarnation, when he put out the universe in time and space and said, right, I'm creating time and space so that sentient creatures can grow. Eventually they'll turn up somewhere, but what I've done is full of potential. And it's the potential of creativity. It's a potential of God. And so we wait and see what happens because we have time. We do have time. And so far it's taken 13.77 billion years. More to come. Okay. So eventually Krusty escaped the original entity and became shared. We'll talk about language now. So you've got the blue tit there who learned how to communicate through space and time somehow. It just does it. That was the one that went around in England picking the top off milk bottles and drinking the cream. And it got transferred to others who were further away than the blue tit would ever fly. And then it got transferred over years, much longer than the blue tit's lifespan. During the Second World War, there were 7 years between these things starting again, and the bird lives no more than 5 years. And of course, it was across an ocean that the bird could not cross. It never moved more than about 5-6 miles from its nest. And you had a couple of 100 miles of North Sea. Several, maybe even more. I don't know how wide it is. So the song of birds became communication. It was able to take, utilize, store, transform, and transmit information. The sonar of bats. I think of some of these parrots in South America, I think it is, who need the chemicals in a certain kind of mud for their young to grow. And so they fly more than 100 miles to go to this cliff face where they eat this mud, store it in the beaks, and fly all the way back and regurgitate it for their young, for the chemical. This is non-monetary exchange of value, I tell you, but it's also an incredible way. How do they communicate this to each other? The sonar of bats, the pheromone of ants, how these insects communicate, where the prey is, where to get it, how to bring it back, or how do they work in teams. The communication of whales. We've all heard recordings of whale song. Deep throughout hundreds, maybe thousands of miles of ocean, the sound can be relayed.
You're also saying a lot of the reason why whales are being beached these days because of all the underground interference of technological noise,
Yeah.
boats and
Sonar from submarines and things. Yeah. And the language of humans. So with communication, this is what we got. The immediate evolution of complex communities. Hives, flocks, herds, tribes, mobs. So language was that huge expansion, that capacity to deal with information in a meaningful way. So the debasing of language, which we see a lot happening these days, twisting and misusing language, and also in education, not teaching language, communication properly. If I'm going to get an idea from your head into my head, and there's a communication as a computer or a piece of paper, a book, then it has to be there in a language both of us understand, with spelling and syntax and grammar that are common for us. And if we don't have it, then misunderstanding occurs. We're not transmitting, and that could become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's one of the things as a language teacher I've been wondering about for years, just how this, when people say, oh, it doesn't matter when you don't have these distinctions anymore, about imply and infer. I imply, you can infer, but we say, oh, that doesn't matter. Did somebody rebut a statement or merely disagree with it? And they use rebuttal when it's simply they don't say, I don't agree. What's the word for that? Rebuttal and gone out of my head, but refute. Refute. You can refute or rebut, and the rebut is evidential. So all of those things mean that when you have them, you can be so precise with what you say. English language is an amazing language, being able to say anything extraordinarily precisely. But what we're doing is debasing it and taking away the distinctions. And I think that that's not a good thing, particularly as it was likely to become more and more and more. Anyway, that's a private thought. So some of the things that have happened within the last 3 decades, and he was talking up to 2005, basically up to 2000. So it's happened even faster since. The emergence of microtechnology, we have 1,000 times better algorithms and 500,000 times computing power per individual. You can probably up that a heck of a lot by now because things are just going so much faster. 500 million times the mobility of information. Half a trillion. Now there's an algorithm for asset management.
What is asset management?
Yeah. Well, well, monetary value, a lot of things, properties and stocks and shares and jewelry and gold and money basically.
There's an algorithm for all that.
Algorithm. And I looked at that and thought, could I make head or tail or any one little bit of that at all? It is extraordinarily complex.
In fact, we already got to the point on our stock exchange. I don't know about others. More buying and selling is done by computers than by human beings. So AI now.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
How can you stop it?
You can't.
Just like you cannot stop the internet.
So then we're going down to nanotechnology. You get a lot of this stuff in science fiction books, of course, of little things offering, but information will move hundreds of times faster in quantities hundreds of times greater. We can probably up that to thousands by now. Equal power to change and alter nature. We do that. We change the course of rivers. We cut down mountains. We block streams. We destroy species. We alter DNA. Yeah. And the question is, do we know what we're doing? And quite often we just do it because we can. So it's another huge societal complexity and diversity explosion. And we're in the midst of it. We're in the midst of it. So it needs to be understood. So with the old choo-choo train in Adelaide heading up the hills, the people love it. Yeah. Can we deal with it using the same old 17th century mechanistic command and control forms of organizations? With all that stuff happening, can you? And the answer is pretty clear, isn't it? We can't. But we are trying it. And that's why things are failing. So when was the last time evolution rang your telephone number and asked your permission? Particularly on a Bakelite telephone. So these things are going to happen, but our managing of it needs to be extraordinarily different. And it, going to the way the universe is organized, the way nature is organized, is probably not a bad idea, because that, we know, works. We have to change our internal mode of reality, our mode of consciousness, our understanding of what is really real. And without the way of Jesus of Nazareth, I think that's very hard to achieve, because you had somebody who was actually fundamentally real and working with the reality of Creator God. And the brain people don't understand that or permit it, or they just laugh that away. And I think, well, yeah, they laugh a lot of stuff away. So And I put that in, that's not his, that's mine. Essential for 21st century spirituality, 2. To change our internal mode of reality. What constitutes church, constitutes religion, how we operate. So change is more about getting rid of than acquiring. So if you get rid of the junk, you'll find that what comes in, nature abhors a vacuum, will replace it. And this is what D. Hock did. He got rid of the junky organisation, and then he said to people, what are you going to fill this with? And away they went. So I've talked about this pair before. A great scientist, well, one was a philosopher, Descartes. He was a very good mathematician. Theologian, not so much. He's the one who coined, I think, therefore I am, which is fundamentally false, I think. Because we don't put our brains aside. That is an essential part of it too, but it's not the only thing. You have to measure it up with the rest of what makes you human, makes you a person. So for 400 years, we've been trying to organize everything that way. Tick-tock. Now, on top of that, you don't want a chaotic operating room. You want it very, very organized. But on the other hand, in operating rooms, you get egotistic surgeons treating nurses very, very badly. In language and hard work, you find that junior doctors have to work, 16-hour days or 32 hours without a break. You get all of those things happening too. So it would be better to have chaotic organisation, which somehow works this much better. How, I don't know for sure now, but I don't know at all, but that's for them to start to approach the whole process and saying, this isn't working. This is not the way to go about it. This is not valuing our people and using all that they can contribute. It's forcing them into servitude. So yes, I want that to organise, but I'd like the whole system to be reorganised, and so that this will work even better, because you've got a whole lot of people who aren't tired out of their brains, who are enthusiastic to be there, whose only goal is to make sure that you are healthy, come back to full health. And that's going to be a lot more energy and probably a lot more successful. So this is what Dee said, that every institution we've known, all of these, mechanistic in its form. If our internal model of reality is a machine, it's difficult to think otherwise or even understand that you are thinking in a mechanistic way. Am I thinking in a mechanistic way? Oh, no, not me. Well, worth examining. So life's not about control. It's not about getting or having or knowing. Now, all of these things will happen, but knowing, for instance, has to go even further. It's not even about being. We need to do, we need to be, but it is about life is eternal, perpetual becoming, or it is nothing. That's a D. Hock statement, worth looking at. Because I've always said that becoming is much more important. We're being adduced, we're being called out by the way of Jesus, by the example of the God around us and what has been given to us, to say, pay attention, and that will bring you into the fullness of what it is possible for you to be. The spiritual and the physical are one. So I agree with him on that. Becoming is not a thing to be known, commanded, or controlled. That's you realise, and we were talking about that earlier. It's you can have failures, you can have mistakes. I often think of one trip I had in the southwest of Tasmania where we got off the line. There was no track, travelling from the road through to Queenstown down to the road through to the Lake Pedder, which they dammed. But that was down through the 3 King Billy Mountains, and we climbed the first one in King William Mountains, call them King Billy's, and we got blizzarded in on the top of the first one. 3 days. There was a hut there. It was just aluminium sort of a frame, a bushwatcher's hut, so it wasn't occupied in winter. It was fortunately it was some protection from the snow, and the wind, but it was cold. After 3 days, I said to the other brother with me and the 4 boys we had, we need to get off this mountain, and that meant that we had to go down and then walk around Lake George, bush bashing all the way. That's 70 miles extra, 70 kilometres extra, and we had a pickup date down at the far end, so we had to move it. But and on as we were doing that, the bush bashing, we did get off the path once, and what we did, we stopped, we used our compass, looked at the peaks around the mountains, contour lines on the map. Some of them, their shapes meant that we recognised them from previous walks. Shepherd's Cap, Mount Arthur, Mount Anne. Got back bearings from 2 of them, and where they crossed, we said, right, we think we're there on the map. Then we got a 3rd back bearing, and it crossed exactly on that point, and we said, we are there. Okay, how do we get back on track? We're just going to retrace our steps? No, we don't have the time. We've got aerial photographs. The Air Force had taken aerial photographs of the whole of Tasmania, and we had got from the scout shop the ones that we needed. So we could look down and see where the Bowra scrub was, where we were, and said, all right, there's a patch of Bowra stuff was almost impossible to get through. Thorny, thick. The only way you could get it, you couldn't cut it with your machete. It would just bounce like bamboo. So you had to push the thing and then get your pack in, push back. You could take 3/4 of an hour getting through, a few meters of the stuff. So you wanted to avoid it, but it tended to grow in long lines, and then there'd be gaps. So we were picking them off on the map, and then we said, right, there's where we want to go. Here's where we go. We join, and that was a way of being able to, to get back on track. Using what we had, using the natural environment, using the surrounds, and getting back on track. So I missed something there, but I won't go back. So stress shall be made available on a mandatory basis by the way we are forced to live. And it's a serious business, this, because you get the nervous system can suddenly shift its energy resources to fighting off the perceived threat, fight or flight. The sympathetic nervous system signals the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol. Okay, not a good thing. These hormones make the heart beat faster, raise blood pressure, change the digestive process, boost glucose levels in the bloodstream. So that's there. Then the musculoskeletal system, the muscles tense up, and that contraction for extended periods can trigger tension, headaches, migraines, and all other kinds of musculoskeletal things. And the same with the respiratory system, hyperventilation, panic attacks, cardiovascular. If it's momentary, such as being stuck in traffic, cause an increase in heart rate. Blood vessels that direct blood to the large muscles dilate, increasing the amount of blood. Repeated episodes of acute stress can cause inflammation in the coronary arteries, lead to heart attack. I can remember once when I was applied for my green card in the United States, I was told I had to go and be examined medically by this doctor in halfway up Indiana, in a town that took a lot of roads across. And I was traveling up there, and I stopped in to get a cup of coffee at one stage, and I asked a guy there, traveling, I said, can you tell me which road to go out of town to go this north direction? He told me. And so I started off that way, and after a while I realised my infinity, I had a compass up here, and I finally looked at it and said, I'm going east. This guy's given me the wrong order. So I looked at the time and I thought, I'm going to miss this appointment. It's absolutely vital to be able to stay in the States, get a visa, because they were stopping my R for religious visa. And so I'd gone to see if I could get a green card. So I turned around and literally 90 miles an hour up the highway, hoping that the police wouldn't catch me. Because in America, of course, they get on the phone straight away when a car does anything wrong, and they call 911. So there's this guy beating up the road, and he's heading that way. And I beetled up the road, and I got there a bit after time, but it was okay. And then the doctor saw me after 4 hours. I could have meandered up the damn road, but anyway. But the thing was, I could feel the stress. I could still feel it was terrible, absolutely terrible. The heart was going, the tenseness, all of that stuff. When I read this, I thought, oh boy, yeah, that was the one time it's really happened to me that there was so much riding on it. So the endocrine system, the adrenal glands, brain send signals from the hypothalamus, causing the adrenal cortex to produce more cortisol, and the adrenal medulla to produce epinephrine, which is sometimes called the stress hormones. So the liver, when those two stress hormones are released, the liver produces more glucose. Again, that would give you the energy for fight or flight in an emergency, but also for anybody who has sugar problems, then it's a lot of sugar. Then you get gastrointestinal system, the esophagus, the stomach, the bowels, they all get stuff that messes them up. Digestion, nutrients, your intestines absorb. It can change what you're absorbing from your food, cuts out a lot of your nutrition. Reproductive system in men, excessive amounts of cortisol can affect the normal functioning of the reproductive systems. Chronic stress can impair testosterone and sperm production, cause impotence. In women, stress can cause absent or irregular menstrual cycles or more painful periods. Also reduce sexual desire. So that's what we provide for ourselves in these systems where we're feeling now, increasingly worried and increasingly impotent, and increasingly all of that stuff's going on. It's in the air around us, and we're having to deal with it. But when you can feel that it is stressing us out, it would be great to find a way and an organization and an environment which doesn't do that. One of the wonderful things of getting away into nature and letting yourself just to be there, and the contemplative prayer which just lets all the rest go and takes in the way of God, reducing that stress level right down, because you know where you are loved. So we're in it now, and it's going to take us a while to get out of it. And we need people to actually respond. And with the reactionaries, for instance, denying climate change, particularly when they're in leadership positions, they are incredibly dangerous people, stopping the whole possibility of the change. When we talk about this in spirituality a lot, to take the leap out of the old system, you have to open your mind. And the minds tend to be shut. And we need to open our heart. And we tend to be looking after ourselves, not moving out to others, valuing others, that respecting. It made me think about this, which I came across when I was sitting in San Damiano, St. Clair's home monastery, and she said, "Gaze, look." And it was a kind of respectful look, looking beneath things to the realities of things. Gaze, consider. Once you've gazed, consider. Then contemplate. Allow God in. Put that what you're thinking out there and just allow it to be while you ask, okay, God, what have you got to say about this? This is what I've gazed at. This is what I've been considering. And then act. That was her mantra. Gaze, consider, contemplate, act. I've always liked that. There's just a practical way of coming at things, particularly in stressful times. I don't know what to do, but I do bring the spiritual side in. Everywhere you go, said Ralph Waldo Emerson, take your giant with you. All the stuff that you've accumulated, you need to take your whole person with you. You need to take the elephant in the room. It will come with you, but you need to start to recognize it. The 800-pound gorilla that you're holding within. So he went on to purpose and principles. So he was working in business. He was working in credit card stuff in the beginning of the whole business, and then developing his own way of saying, well, how do we get this organized so that it works? How do we get it so that our people are free and we're using all of their ingenuity and creativity and their resources? How do we get it so that they're very willing to do this? And he found top-down command and control, special privilege and profit toxic. His business did make profit, made a lot of profit, but not excessive. And it certainly didn't marginalize or try to cheat or put down any of the people who were working in it. And he said, but those organizations are full of people. And it's about time that the time of the little poor ones, is past. And that is my comment on it. That water is going to poison her, and we can't put up with it anymore. There's people in camps, concentration camps, refugee camps, slums, which is a product of the way we organise. No-go areas in town. You say, oh, they live in, what would we say in Sydney? We'd put a name on that. Suburbs, where, you sort of say, oh, right.
Not really. Redfern's really gentrified.
Redfern has changed, but it used to be. What's the one out from St Mary's? Mount Druitt. Yeah. Mount Druitt. Lonergan, Brisbane, is it? Yeah. So Logan City. So yes, and what we have in Australia is nowhere near Mukuru slum, or where we have one of our missions in Nairobi. 600,000 people, no sewage, no running water, no, just poverty everywhere. So we need a critical mass of people who think differently, and it's not a critical mass. What do we got? Yeah, not like this. Nuclear explosion. That was the original critical mass. You get a critical mass of uranium and that'll explode. But we need a different critical mass. We don't need it like a couple of other examples, maybe. When you had a huge number of people in Tiananmen Square and they were blasted off chased out, and then you got the one fellow stopping the tanks. Wonder what happened to him. Well, I don't wonder, I know what happened to him. Just very quietly. He'll still be in whatever the Chinese version of the Gulag is. If he's not dead. Yeah. I'll get rid of that. But like this. That was Manila, the end of Marcos. And the people came out and said, oh, where did that go to? No. I hate it when I do that. Anyway, yeah. I just revisit those. I got to remember the ones where I put in a click and ones where I didn't put in a click. Okay. All right. So the people came out. That's a photograph of them. Manila. They had enough of Marcos, and what was his wife? Imelda was her 1,000 pairs of shoes. Yeah. So, and Marcos, of course, had the army out in front of the palace, residential palace. But these people just walked up with flowers, and they put them in the muzzles of the rifles.
That's great.
And the army men just said, "We can't. These are our people. We can't shoot them." They had orders to shoot them, you know. And he said, "You can't. You just can't. There are too many. We don't have enough bullets." All the excuses. So, but they just overwhelmed them with. Basically, they didn't blame them. They knew that their role. They were ordered, and they'd been growing up in this thing where you obey orders, even when they are murderous. With the flowers in the muzzles of the rifles, they walked straight through and into the palace and stole Imelda's shoes. That was the end of Marcos. That's a critical mass. We need people who are able to get together and say, enough already. And without it, it's not going to happen. So we talked about mission statements. And so it's important to say, I don't have a mission statement, but does the mission statement have me? Is it true? Is it real in that sense? Is it true? Is it good? Is there a certain beauty about it? And remember, I keep saying, when you've got truth and beauty and goodness, you've got God. Purpose, an unambiguous impression, what people wish to become. I've talked about this before, there's two statements. So this is me rather than D. Principle, a fundamental belief about how you intend to conduct yourself in pursuit of that purpose. We're going to climb this mountain. What equipment do we need? What training? Have I enough strength in my legs, so I need to train and whatever else I do before I climb to the top of a 13 or 14,000 foot mountain. My spirituality, one way of looking at it, there's never been a really firm, good definition of spirituality. It's something which is chaotic. It defies definition. But one that I like is, how am I going to lean into life? How am I going to lean into life so that life is something which is enlivening? I see people quite often in nursing homes, but other places too, with the drudgery of life. In Japan, you can get it with the company men who have to work insane hours and toe the company line and sing the company song, because otherwise they'll be thrown out. And if they're thrown out of one company, they'll never get into another. That kind of tyranny. And you might say, well, yes, they've got money and they're existing, but it's not life. So we can't just see spirituality as our personal piety. People who go into the church and there's people talking to others and they get angry because I want to pray. So our sacraments are essentially social. And the last time I saw Eucharist was a sacrament. It's about relationship. All language. We need to talk to each other. We need to communicate. Sermons be really good, at least occasionally, to have people conversing up the front and then bringing others in. What's this mean for us practically in our life? Throw out a lot of the prayers, these long prayers that go over people's heads, where they wait after the consecration till we get the great Amen. what happens in between, what happens before, a whole lot of prayers around communion. You need to really look at this and say, what is it? Get the people to actually say it rather than a bunch of people with funny hats. And why can't it be different in different countries according to the way the people operate and the relationships that occur there? Oh no, we've got to have it. We've got to have one. Yeah. The Latin, we have the language, same language around the world. One French education minister back a few decades now said, right, it's 11 o'clock. Every secondary student in France will be studying mathematics at this time. How inhuman is that? And what a pressure it put on schools. So if purpose and principles are constructive and healthy, then our groupings will be different. And it can't be predicted. They will release the human spirit and be constructive of the biosphere, not destructive. And you get that too with some things, started with Australians too, permaculture, cleaning up rivers and coastlines around the world now. They've taken on. That's chaotic, minimal structure, no pay, just people releasing the human spirit. You release the human spirit and they say, we want to do this. We value our world. Both natural and human capital will be released in abundance, and Caesar can have his gold. We don't need it. Dispense with command and control. People will know how to behave in accordance with both purpose and principles, and will do it in thousands of unimaginable creative ways. That's what he believed, and that's what happened. Yes, some failures, some dead ends, of course. He said, okay, yeah, nature also has that. Dispense with command and control, and people will know how to behave in accordance with both purpose and principle. And they'll do it. And you won't be able to predict it. It'd be great. And he did that with Visa. So that's where he got that from too. He tried it and then it worked. Get enough people who get it, there's your critical mass. Then energy, excitement, enthusiasm, which comes from entheos, in God. Energy, a word dynamis that was used with every miracle of Jesus. He energized people, constantly energized them. The splagnitzomai, he loved them with an everlasting deep love. And that explodes out of them. They know what to do. And that's what they found. And that's exciting. Depressing what we were talking about earlier, but if you can get this to happen, and people get this to happen, they need to come together. You need the critical mass. You can't say, I will do it. That's egotism. And I can't do it. And D left his organisation after it was established, after a few years. He said, I don't need money. I can become famous. I can become very, very rich. He went off and got 200 acres of very, very badly treated land and set about restoring it. And using his monkey mind, as we're told, the trickster, to work out these things. And then he started to teach that around the world, to pass on the results of his practical experience. So open membership. Where did I get to that? Yeah. Okay, I think I put this into... Oh, no, I didn't bring up my notes. Yeah. I had notes. I had stuff to say before this, and I've left them down in my room, I think. Well, I have. So Father Arendizmieta in Spain was teaching business in a small Catholic college, And after a while, he got 5 students and said, why don't we put this into practice? What we're talking about, our business principles. And they started a cooperative, not so much a business, but a cooperative, where they worked together, these 5 young men, with Father Ariz Dimieta as the principal, and or as their mentor, really. And it became quite successful. It was Mondragon Corporation. And they built 10 principles, and they had 4 processes. It is now 81 cooperatives with more than 280 companies. It is the most profitable enterprise in Basque Country, the 7th most profitable in Spain. It is based on these principles, and this is really a DHOC type of organization. So these people are doing it. It's open membership. Anybody who accepts their principles, any organization, particularly cooperatives, can join, and companies. It's democratic. One person, one vote system for election of the operatives, governing bodies, and for deciding on the most important issues. Everybody gets an equal say. The CEO does not get a bigger say than the smallest employee. Sovereignty of labour. Profit is allocated on the basis of the work contributed by each member in order to achieve this profit. You get paid according to how you contribute. But nobody gets less than a living wage. Instrumental and subordinated nature of capital. The capital factor is a necessary resource, but it does not confer the right to vote, and stake in the profit is limited to labour. It's a resource, but it doesn't rule the roost. Participation in the management. People's responsible involvement in managing the business. They're all involved in management. They're not just functionaries. Tef. The mechanistic stamping of forms, which some people are reduced to. The invention of the production line. Well, one person does one little thing. Rolls Royces and companies like that, and other places where they need a production line, they change the people around to different jobs. They learn all sorts of different jobs, so they become well-rounded. And if they decide to leave the company, you've got all these gifts, all these abilities that are transmittable, and get them employed elsewhere. So different ways of doing things. So the people's responsible involvement, they need to be responsible, able to respond if they're going to stay there. The 6th one, wage solidarity in accordance with the cooperative's real possibilities and equitable at an internal and external level, and for Mondragon. So the wages come with the profits, with the cooperative's real possibilities, and they're equitable for both internal and external. Intercooperation is a mechanism for solidarity between cooperatives and business efficiency. So that if the 81 cooperatives, several companies in each of them, there needs to be this strong cooperation. They talk to each other, listen to each other. What we brothers have been looking about is generative listening and generative speaking, rather than trying to win and control others and come out with more money. It's not a matter of the money. It's a matter of the cooperation. It's a matter of the success of the business. What are we trying to do and how are we trying to do it? Social transformation, commitment to the support of sustainable development of our local area. Universality, in solidarity with the promoters of economic democracy within the context of the social economy, fully embracing the goals of the international cooperative movement. Fair amount in that. Solidarity, again, that word again and again and again. Promoters of economic democracy social economy. Education, promoting people in the cooperative VAT culture, allocating human and financial resources to the cooperative and professional education of the members and of young people in general. Not a bad set of 10 principles. And it works. They are profitable. They do, if they come into financial difficulty, I remember in 2008 and in this and subsequent to that, one firm that said, "Oh, we've got to maintain our profits. We need to keep our shareholders on side." We're firing 4,000 people in order to maintain the profits. This group would never do that. I'd say we have to keep our people, and that means we cut into our profits for this year and maybe next year.
So, Barry, these principles work for this company. What stops?
This set of organized, yeah, it's a.
So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Why do you think, say, people who say decide to, let's just use, say, people who headed up to England with some of those ideals, but nothing eventuates or it falls apart? Where do you think they've gone wrong?
They don't have critical mass. It can be stopped by, like in his early years, he had a terrible time with management because they, every time, even though he was successful, they stopped him. You have to follow our rules. The company is the prime thing, not the people. They weren't listening. So yes, a whole lot of stuff can be stonkered just like that by people who will not allow it to proceed and have got the power to do that through funding, through firing, all of that kind of thing. So you need to have the cooperative. That word can't be emphasised enough. It is those who are, and then a situation which allows them then to be free and it energizes them by doing that. And I say, yeah, we want to cooperate. This is great. So it does need that. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, and funny enough, it made me think, I can't remember that religion is in America that wears old-fashioned clothes. Yeah, and that seems to function, those communities, the Amish communities, they're, as a community anyway, it seems to function and there's a lot of working together.
There's a lot of good stuff about it. I had some Amish working in, well, I didn't have it, the Sister Province in St Mary of the Woods. They came in, the big Amish communities around. Well, they weren't big, but there were a number of them, so big in that sense. They came in with their trucks and electric tools, so things are changing slightly. They just had to cover the distance to get there. Their horse and buggies. When I took some people on a tour around Indiana from our place in our bus, I stopped once on a dirt road, and of course all the people, I said, don't use your cameras. And of course they just click, click, click. There's this buggy came by with one horse and a young boy and I'd say his sister. They were very young. Came clip clopping by. So still got plenty of that. But they'll also shun anybody who doesn't follow the rules normally. And shunning is a terrible damn thing. That's scapegoating. Takes you right away from the source of all energy in life. So there's still, the cooperation is somewhat coerced, somewhat, with those organisations, but they do a heck of a lot of good things as well. So with those who are following and obeying their principles and willingly doing that, well then yes, it works. And they'll come together to achieve things would be very, very, very difficult otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about what they do to make a profit because Australia's got a history of co-op, particularly in, say, the dairy industry. The local farmers had a co-op. Like the desert Norco was originally a North Coast.
Yes, yeah.
So, but they all you have to say failed, because the circumstances have changed. Like, but there's a co-op doesn't exist anymore because there aren't any dairy farms anymore. So yes, I'm interested in curious, right, about what they do that makes a profit. It's great that they do it, but there are also clothing, school cooperatives, retail cooperatives in the country town. Yeah.
Well, you need to have these principles be operative. But these companies, they're businesses, they work, they trade. So more than that, I can't tell you.
I just dairy was made. The retail cooperative just came into being later because I can't even remember what it was. It was a retail cooperative.
And you can find people will stop at them because they won't give them fair pay for their products, that kind of thing. They'll run them out of business.
Yeah. And then supermarkets stopped that, and then big multinational companies came in and bought dairy farms, not one dairy farm, but a number of dairy farms.
Yeah, and you find that in yeah. And it makes it very difficult when you've got these mechanistic businesses that come in and smother them. Yes, but this mob were able to withstand whatever that was around, and mainly it was these principles that they operated with. And this is a principle of Jesus of Nazareth. I've come that you may have life and have it to the full. And this kind of organization and way of organizing really, really does help that, because this has to become practical, has to be real. So, 11:30 past. We need to have a second break. Need to have a break because we're getting onto another area here.